I'm taking a break, alright?
Goodbye, goodbye, good friends,
Just a break from talking about current Chelsea affairs for the day. I know that you all panicked there for a moment. You thought, what are we going to do? Daily videos are stopping now. We're just taking a break from talking about transfer rumours. We're taking a break from talking about the current squad. Yes, guys, welcome back to another video. As you can see from the title, we're changing the game a little bit today. We're going to talk about the team of the decade. I've got a cup of tea in hand. I advise you to go and make yourself a hot drink of choice. It's Christmas. Maybe you want a little festive hot chocolate. Maybe you're a bit like me, normally a coffee drinker, but I went for an old cup of the good old Tetley tea. And we're going to talk through the best Chelsea team of the decade. And boy, it has been a great decade, hasn't it? Right from the beginning, all the way to 2019, Chelsea, we became the only team in London with a European Cup. Still to this day, we've won 2 Europa League trophies as well. Sometimes you can't always win the big boy, so you just win the medium-sized boy as well. We've done that. We've been there, we've done it. We've won an FA Cup, a couple of them. We won League Cups. We just had a brilliant, brilliant decade. And as a Chelsea fan, hit the like button on this video just for Chelsea between 2010 and 2020. In a couple of weeks' time, we enter a new decade. A decade of unknowns, a decade of uncertainties. But one thing is for sure, we'll be following Chelsea all the way on the George Benson football channel. So if you're not yet subscribed, make sure you do so, and let's get into the goalkeeper. So the way that I've actually put this team together is in a 4-3-3, but as we get closer to the front, we've kind of had to just be like, okay, well, it doesn't technically work, but it just flipping does, all right? We're going to make it work somehow. It's a team that, if they were playing together now, they would kind of work, but there'd be a couple of players that would be playing in unfavourable positions on the pitch. So I want you guys to let me know, as this video goes on, what your preferred Chelsea team would be. You can either make it with all of your favourite players from this decade, or you could make it as a team that you think would win the Premier League now if all of these players were playing in the same team. But the goalkeeper, we've had some decent goalkeepers. We've had some goalkeepers that we've been excited about that haven't quite hit the heights that we wanted them to. For example, Thibaut Courtois. He came in, there was a lot of speculation about how good he would be. We sent him back on loan, and then he came back and he never really connected fully with the Chelsea fans. But there was one goalkeeper who had a specific head injury in 2006 thanks to a challenge from one of the Hunt brothers at Reading at the Medeski flipping stadium. Yet still, despite that injury, which was a life-threatening injury, Petr Cech carried the mantle. He's now back at Chelsea, even though he's retired from professional football. But how good was Petr Cech? We won the league in 2010. Yes, he ended up going to Arsenal, but no one can really begrudge the man anything considering what he's done for Chelsea. I remember watching his first ever game, and obviously that is not in this decade that we're in celebrating right now. In 2004, when Petr Cech came in, and he played his first game against Manchester United in the Premier League. For those of you that remember this, Idiger Johnson got the winner, and on that day, on his Premier League debut, Petr Cech made some huge saves, and we just knew from that moment that Chelsea had bought themselves a goalkeeper for the future. And we sit here, we're talking a moment ago about a previous decade. We're sat here at the end of this decade, and Petr Cech is Chelsea's goalkeeper of the decade. He won us the Champions League. Yes, Didier Drogba was absolutely instrumental in that game, but you can also say that Petr Cech played as much, if not an even bigger part in that, with the saves he made during the 90 minutes, with the saves he made in extra time, particularly denying Iron Robben from the penalty spot, and then the saves he made in the penalty shootout. That alone was always going to put him as Chelsea's #1 goalkeeper for the decade, even if we had a goalkeeper for the next 8 years after it who won us a couple of Premier Leagues. Petr Cech was one of the main reasons Chelsea have that elusive European Cup. So we're going to move in to the centre-back partnership, and we're going to talk about them one by one. But we're going to start off with John Terry. It's the obvious one. I think it is the one where if I didn't put him in because I either forgot or tried to come up with some logical reason as to why there was someone else better than him, I think you lot would have unsubscribed from the George Benson football channel. And I would have been annoyed if you didn't unsubscribe as a result of not putting in John Terry. John Terry is the greatest Chelsea captain we have ever had. He is an absolute gargantuan of a leader. He is a huge defender. Playing out with his right foot or playing out with his left foot, the confidence that John Terry had on the ball when he took the ball out from the box, when he passed it, was like no one else I've seen in recent years. If we're talking about Premier League teams of the decade, which I will be making a video on that with someone else who you guys will know from another YouTube channel later on this week, But John Terry, for me, football will struggle to find a leader and a captain as good as John Terry ever again. Chelsea's number 26. For me, he's the captain of this team. Not only is he in the team of the decade, but he's also the captain. And he is partnered by the man that took the armband from him, Gary Cahill. Towards the end of his Chelsea career, people were starting to get a bit frustrated by his performances, but you could see from the reception that Gary Cahill received when he came back as a Crystal Palace player. A few weeks back, just how he is adored by the Chelsea fan base. He came in, had a huge part to play in the Champions League winning season. He won the Europa League as well. Gary Cahill has got to be in this team for me. I think, again, he always put his body on the line. He made big tackles, big blocks, and he was a leader. He was someone that could come in, and John Terry's boots as captain were some of the biggest boots you could fill in football. But Gary Cahill came in throughout his entire Chelsea career. Gary Cahill gave absolutely everything. He's been with us for a long time, from near the beginning of the decade all the way through until last season. So Gary Cahill partners John Terry, and we move in to the left back position, and it's got to be Ashley Cole. Ashley Cole left after the end of the season in 2014. He won us the Premier League in 2010. He signed for us in 2006. Ashley Cole spent 8 years at Chelsea, half in the previous decade, half in this decade that we're talking about today, from 2010 to 2020. And I don't think there's been anyone in the Premier League era playing in the left back position who's been as good as Ashley Cole. People will say Patrice Evra. That's a good shout. Evra's a really good player. Ashley Cole was leagues above him, and we were so lucky to have Ashley Cole at Chelsea. He won us the Champions League. He won the Europa League. Retired from football, what does he go and do? He comes back and works at Chelsea. I feel as though there's such a brilliant inclusive nature within our football club where legends that retire, they always find a way to come back. Sometimes not in their playing days, but Ashley Cole is now back at the club, and even though he's not played for us since 2014, he was an absolute joy to watch on the pitch. The best left back we've had at the club. Marcus Alonso came in, he had a good season or so, and he's given us some beautiful moments, Alonso, but in terms of the conversation with Ashley Cole, nah, we're not even picking up the phone. Now, have a little swig of this cup of tea. I'm enjoying this one. So the right back position was between two players. We've had Azpilicueta, who's still there at Chelsea and scored some big goals, played pretty much anywhere along the back line. But then we cannot forget the legend, the Serbian man who is now playing at Zenit in the Russian league, Branislav Ivanovic. Ivanovic is an absolute legend at Chelsea Football Club. 3 Premier Leagues, 3 FA Cups, a Champions League, a Europa League, and a League Cup as well. Ivanovic, for the majority of his career at Chelsea, was just an absolute humongous player for us in the right back position. He either played centre back or at right back. So for the purpose of building our team of the decade, Ivanovic definitely goes in at right back. I think he definitely had his best seasons as a Chelsea player at right back. He was just a natural winner. And again, one of those kind of players who had the strength, who had the ability to go forward, who was always a danger when he came forward for corners, including a winning goal from his head in the Europa League final in 2013. Branislav Ivanovic gets it. Honourable mention though, and we will go through a substitutes bench after. Honourable mention for Cesar Azpilicueta, who's still with us and will go into the next decade still as a Chelsea player. But Branislav Ivanovic, for me, it couldn't really be anyone else. So now we move into a midfield 3, and we're going to start off with N'Golo Kante. At the moment, Chelsea fans are getting a bit frustrated by Kante. They don't think he's had the best of recent performances, but what we cannot deny is that N'Golo Kante has been a Chelsea player for a few seasons now, and he's absolutely levelled up the Chelsea midfield. When Frank Lampard retired from Chelsea, we were looking for a star quality, world-class player to come in, not only control the midfield, but just give us some security, particularly in front of a defence that wasn't going to be as good when players like John Terry departed the club. N'Golo Kante, people still don't really know what his best position is. I do think he is best in front of the defence, but he's evolving his game. He's ended this decade at Chelsea, and since he's come in, you know, he had that amazing season at Leicester. For some crazy reason, not every club in the Premier League put in a bid for him, which I just find ludicrous, considering not only has he been so good for Chelsea, but he's a bargain. Like 30 odd million or 32 million, whatever it was, for N'Golo Kante. The man is a genius. I didn't think we'd ever get a defensive midfielder, and I'm not bracketing Kante right now as a defensive midfielder. I know that triggers some people. Makelele was a defensive midfielder, and he was someone who I didn't think we'd ever get anyone like him again. N'Golo Kante has been that, and he's evolving his game now. And even though there's links with Real Madrid and all this stuff, I still think going into the next decade, N'Golo Kante has got so much more to offer at Chelsea, and I'm excited for what he does in the future. So the next man, he's magic. He wears a magic hat. He could have signed for Arsenal, but he said no. And I won't say the next word because then my monetization will go down the pan. Cesc Fabregas, what an absolute legend this guy is. We all remember that special pass he did, the little dink over to Andre Schürrle at Turf Moor in Burnley. That's one of the memorable moments. Fabregas has had plenty of memorable moments in a Chelsea shirt, and it was between him and another Spaniard, and I'm sure you can guess who it is, and we'll go into this man in my honourable mentions once the starting 11 is finished. Cesc Fabregas came in and he kind of gave his career a second wind. We saw him during his younger years at Arsenal, and the man took the Premier League by storm, came in from a young age, went back to Barcelona. He comes back to Chelsea and he gave us two instrumentally monumental seasons, particularly the 2015 Premier League win and of course the 2017 Premier League win as well. Fabregas is passing. He had the ability to pass a ball like very few players ever have in the Premier League. He got so many assists as well. And despite not being the quickest of central midfielders, he offered leadership qualities that were really useful in the Chelsea team. So even though he wasn't with us for the longest period of time, Cesc Fabregas for me makes it into this team over his Spanish counterpart, Juan Mata. I'm sure you've already guessed it by now, but he's in the honourable mentions list. Into the final player in this midfield three, and again, I would expect you to unsubscribe if I hadn't done this. I shouldn't be like teasing you all to unsubscribe as much as I am in this video. Subscribe to the George Benson football channel if you haven't already. Blimey, I'm really not doing my job well today, am I? Super Frankie Lampard, he's now the manager, he's back at Chelsea. There was one moment in this decade that I actually did almost cry. There was like genuine tears brewing in my eyes when Man City bought on Frank, and you just knew because he was just such a flipping good player. Frank Lampard ghosts into the box, puts his hands up, but he scored against Chelsea and we drew that match at the Etihad 1-1. Frank Lampard is Chelsea for me. Like, from the moment I was old enough to really follow Chelsea properly, like when you're less than 10 years old, you're into it, but you don't have like every day determined by a Chelsea result the way you do when you get a bit older. Frank Lampard has given me so many memories as a player, and even now, the chapter is opened, the book as a player is closed, the managerial chapter is opened, the new book is being written, and Frank is already giving me moments that I will always remember. For example, the away game at Wolves when he comes over. Like, Frank Lampard is just a hero of mine from my childhood. Like, if I ever get to meet the bloke, which I really hope I do, I will say thank you to him as the first thing before we get into any like reasons as to why I'm actually there. We're not just there for a flipping cup of tea, although I would love to have a cup of tea with Frank, I'm not gonna lie. But John Terry might have been the captain, but Frank Lampard was as big of a player in terms of that kind of influence from a captain's level as John Terry was. He scored so many goals, was always there at the biggest moments, won countless trophies. He's a Chelsea man through and through. He even says it these days in his managerial interviews. Frank Lampard finishes off the midfield. I flipping love the bloke. Now let's go into the front three. And this is where it starts to get a little bit, well, you can't have him there because he don't play there. And I'm going to get the picture because I just need to remind you again that we've drawn Bayern Munich in the Champions League, a return to the Allianz Arena. Didier Drogba. This is one of my favourite pictures I own. It was brought to me by one of my best mates. It's Didier Drogba the moment the ball hits the back of the net as Manuel Neuer looks on in despair with the gaunt faces of the Bayern Munich fans who thought they were going to win that Champions League in their own backyard, but no. A team from West London playing in blue against all the odds go to Munich and come away with the Champions League. And Didier Drogba didn't only score the winning penalty, he scored one of the best headers against what was, and who was currently at the time, the best goalkeeper in the world. A bullet header from a Juan Mata corner. Still to this day, the best moment of my life. Genuinely. Like, football is everything to me. I'm sure you can probably guess that from the fact I spend all of my life talking about it every single day. When that goal went in, I honestly wish I was filming. I wasn't filming because I couldn't even flipping talk. I was actually chewing on a pillow. Ironically, I throw the pillows off of the sofa. I was in tears during extra time. Like, I was already, I couldn't handle it. I was just an emotional flipping wreck. Didier Drogba was the kind of player that You don't get players like Didier anymore, with the ability to have all of the strength in the world from a mental standpoint and a physical standpoint to bully, literally bully the best defenders in the world off of the ball. Didier Drogba. He left in 2012 and he came back again, but there was no way he was never making this team of the decade. Drogba was absolutely instrumental in the greatest night in the history of Chelsea Football Club. He is one of my strikers, and we're going to put this man on the right wing. And I think if I said to him, Diego, mate, you're playing on the right wing today, I'd probably run as I said the last word to make sure he didn't attack me for sticking him in a position that he doesn't want to play in. Diego Costa. I said they don't make strikers like Didier Drogba anymore, but Chelsea, during this decade, have been absolutely blessed with two of the biggest bullies in world football. Diego Costa, opposition fans hated him. People despised Diego Costa, but during his time at Chelsea, he probably was one of, if not my favourite player. Because you always knew that he would wind up a defender so much that it could single-handedly win Chelsea the game, whether he got the goal and the assist or not. Diego Costa was a one-of-a-kind. Sadly, it didn't work out for him in the end. He fell out with Antonio Conte, and we didn't get to see more of Diego Costa, but he won us 2 Premier League trophies. He got a League Cup in there as well. And in the 2 seasons, in 2015 and 2017, where we did win the Premier League, Diego Costa's goals and his sheer presence in the big games within this Chelsea team, similar to Didier Drogba, Diego Costa was the difference. And we move over to the left wing, and it is none other than the magician, who it is still sad these days to see him in a white shirt of Real Madrid, Eden Hazard. What a player he was. He signed for us. He said he was signing for the European champions. Again, this is a bit of a throwback video. Loving looking back to all these memories. Eden Hazard signs for Chelsea, wins the Europa League in his first season, instrumental in countless other seasons as well. Eden Hazard, he says maybe one day he'll come back to Chelsea once his job is done at Real Madrid. Shout out to Frank Cahill for getting that little clip for us. Eden Hazard was just a joy to watch. When I first grew up being a Chelsea fan, Gianfranco Zola was that magician, that player that could just ghost around the back of defenders and score an unbelievable goal. Didn't think I was going to see it again to the levels in which Eden Hazard brought Chelsea Football Club. So yeah, that is my team of the decade. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. So I'm going to move now into my honourable mentions. And it's not necessarily honourable mentions by being like a cohesive substitutes bench. I feel as though this is an honourable mentions list for players who you could argue deserve a place in this team, but they didn't quite make it. You guys get the point. Is Azpilicueta. We mentioned him when we were going through the defenders. It was either going to be Branislav Ivanovic or Azpilicueta, and then when you just look at the honours list that Ivanovic won and the influence he had in the Chelsea team, Ivanovic trumped Azpilicueta, but Azpilicueta definitely is on that honourable mentions list. He's been at Chelsea now for a long time. He's the current captain. He ends the decade as Chelsea captain with a big part still to play.
He's making that stupid noise again. Can you shut your mouth, you little rascal?
Some of you might disagree with this, and some of you might not even be able to consider this player due to the fact that he made a move from West London to North London, but I'm putting David Luiz in the honourable mentions list for the team of the decade. I still love David Luiz. He gave me 2 very good videos that I uploaded in the summer. And it's not just that, he was always a very likeable character within the Chelsea team. He was in the Champions League final winning side as well. He always loved Chelsea. He went to PSG, came back to Chelsea, and then at the beginning of this season, yeah, he kind of tarnished his reputation by signing for Arsenal. But again, I can't begrudge the other things that David Luiz has done and the leadership that he's brought into the Chelsea team during a decade where things really did turn for Chelsea. We lost the spine of a team that had been so successful, and David Luiz makes it into my honourable mentions list. And we move into the 3rd player in the honourable mentions list, and I mentioned Juan Mata earlier today. Won the Champions League with Chelsea, put in the corner for Didier Drogba. I could have very easily put Juan Mata ahead of Cesc Fabregas, but I chose Fabregas just for his sheer ability and class. Juan Mata as well had his best years of his career in a Chelsea shirt, in my opinion. He's never quite hit the same heights at Manchester United, and again, he spent a few years there now, so it's hard for me to kind of ignore that, even though of course Juan Mata, when he did play for Chelsea, gave everything, was player of the year 2 years in a row, and I didn't understand how and why we sold him at the time, but he's still gone on. He's a very nice bloke as well, Juan Mata. He's in my honourable mentions list. And then moving into the 4th player in my honourable mentions list, some of you may just despise this idea because I know this man has got some people that just really don't like him and can't understand anything he's done for Chelsea, but I'm putting Willian in my honourable mentions list. Yes, he's never really set the world alight at Chelsea. He's never had like a season where he's just been astronomically good. If you want to watch a video I made on Willian where I actually go through all of his different seasons at Chelsea, I'll leave it as a card on the screen. It's quite an interesting one to look back on his previous year's stats. But he's played a lot of matches for Chelsea. He's scored a fair few goals, not as many as we'd like. He's got a few assists, again, not as many as we would like. But he's been an ever-present in recent years, and Willian gets an honourable mention from me, as does another Brazilian, Ramirez. And even if it's just for that one goal that he scored in Barcelona, which gave us the hope that we can go on to win the Champions League. He was gargantuan in that game. John Terry was sent off. We're down to 10 men against Lionel Messi. Barcelona. How we did that, I will never ever know. Ramirez played a huge part in that Champions League winning campaign, and he was a brilliant player for Chelsea, and I'm still actually a little bit upset that we sold Ramirez. I think he still had a lot more to give, always had the energy, always was a driving force in the Chelsea midfield. Speaking of driving forces, and the final honourable mention that I'm going to give in this video, Ob Mikkel Essien and also John Obi Mikkel. Couldn't miss these two out, both Champions League winners at Chelsea. John Obi Mikkel, let's just talk about him for a second. I remember very well the goal that he scored in Paris Saint-Germain away. John Obi Mikkel scores from a corner. It's one of my favourite ever moments as a match-going Chelsea fan. That match away at PSG, we didn't win the game and we ended up getting knocked out that season. For some weird reason, I always remember that Mikkel goal. Essien, in the previous decade, towards the end of the previous decade, I think he was a little bit more instrumental in the Chelsea side than he was in the 3 years until 2013 that we had him. But still, we cannot underestimate the kind of performances that Mikkel Essien would bring to the table on a consistent basis. It was a joy to watch. A bison in the middle of the park for Chelsea. That is my team of the decade. I would love to know what you guys want to say about it in the comments down below. Let me know your favourite players of this past decade. 2020 is around the corner. Maybe, you know, who knows what's going to happen with YouTube, but I could be sat here in 10 years time making the same video. Probably not in this chair because, well, it's not mine for a start. I'm renting this apartment and this is the geezer who owns this apartment's chair. So I'm probably not going to be sat in this spot or on this chair, but who knows, maybe in 10 years I'm still making videos talking about Chelsea, blabbing on, and you guys are still putting up with it, and we could make this video again, but we've got to wait 10 years for it. So this is a bit of a one-off. Leave a like if you did enjoy it, and as always, let me know your comments in the comments down below. Tomorrow's a big one. I'm doing my Tottenham preview tomorrow. I want to do it early because I'm just too flipping excited about it. Thank you guys for watching. I will see you all tomorrow. Bye-bye.